Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Hilliard MacBeth, author of the second edition of the book When the Bubble Burst, Surviving the Canadian Real Estate Crash. He's also a portfolio manager and financial advisor in Edmonton. Welcome back to the show, Hilliard.
Nice to be back.
Hilliard, construction in BC is expected to keep the provincial economy going somewhat. It'll still be a downturn next year, but perhaps the least worst in all of Canada because of construction. Alberta might have a big major construction project around the corner that might help to boost the economy. The Alberta government giving its backing to building a Hyperloop between Edmonton and Calgary. Do you have any details on that?
Well, I just saw the announcement, and it's a $10 billion project, and they want to run a sort of a test for a couple of years, and then would start construction in 2027. And it'd be a half-hour trip from Edmonton to Calgary in small capsules. Not a lot of detail, but the picture looks like there wouldn't be room to have your car in there. You would have to get into a fairly snug space and be zipped. Much like, I think it sounds like it's one of those pneumatic tubes where there's a vacuum created that just sucks you from Edmonton to Calgary or Calgary to Edmonton. And I don't know what the capacity is going to be. But there has been over the years, going all the way back to the 1960s, proposals for high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary. So this is another one. This is the latest. Now, Elon Musk has the Hyperloop. I'm surprised they're not talking to him about it, but he has this, I think, a slightly different approach. But in any case, of course, the question is, with less than 5 million people, does Alberta really justify a $10 billion expenditure? And spoiler alert, no, it doesn't justify. So if you figure the money could earn 5% in the stock market or whatever, then you'd have to come up with $500 million a year of returns just to pay for the capital, never mind the operating expenses. And of course, there's no way you get enough passengers to do that. If everybody paid $100 a year for one trip, every single Albertan would have to travel once a year on that thing, and there's absolutely no way that's going to happen. So it's a great announcement, but I don't think hopefully they don't build it because it'd be a colossal waste of money.
Would it be a good way to ship oil?
Well, pipelines are easier, so you don't need the quality and you don't need the speed. So, for example, in the oil pipeline, the oil is moving at the pace that a person can walk. So it's about 3 miles an hour or 5 kilometers an hour is how fast it goes. So most of the oil in Alberta is loaded in Hardisty, and if it goes into the U.S., it takes, I don't know, probably at walking speed, probably a month to get there, or several weeks anyway. And it doesn't matter because once the pipeline is full, there's always oil coming out the other end. And so there's no urgency for speed. And it's an elevated tube, so it looks quite futuristic in the pictures that they showed. They've got it right beside the highway. But wouldn't you rather have your car, when you get off the tube at the other end after your half-hour trip, now you have to rent a car or get a taxi or whatever. Most people would rather drive the 2.5, 3 hours, have their car at the other end. It'd be more convenient.
Yeah, and a capsule that carries a car, that would take a whole lot more energy to move than just one person.
Yeah, that would be a big deal. I mean, you think about, there was a guy, and actually I think I saw something recently that might be making a comeback, but there was a guy with balloons doing transport. When the oil sands was first opening up, one of the transportation ministers of Alberta, his name is, I'm not going to be able to get his name, had a proposal to use these massive helium airships to float the cargo up north. And that actually isn't a bad idea. So there's a road going up to Fort McMurray, and there was something called the Northern Alberta Railway going up there as well. But it ended up that most people flew because it's quite a long way. And so the airships would have saved a lot of money. But, when the boom was on, expense was no problem. It didn't matter how much it cost. Like oil sands plants that were originally designed to cost $3 billion ended up costing $12 billion. And nobody blinked an eye. They just started building the next one. So, there was a few days of concern, but it would die out after a while. Then there'd be another one announced, and they would build that one. And it was crazy. It was crazy times, and those times. I never say never, but it'll be a long time till that kind of craziness comes back.
Now, in comparison, it seems to me the Hyperloop would be something that would work really well in a densely populated area. Aren't they talking about the same thing between Toronto and Montreal, which already is a very densely populated area, and there is a lot of travel between those two cities? Yeah,
I think that might make more sense because you got, 5 million at one end and whatever, 3 million at the other end. So it might be easier to justify the capital cost. But don't forget, you're still competing with airlines that are charging $100, $150, assuming that you can travel on them post-COVID, if there ever is a post-COVID era. And of course, you got the regular trains as well. So it's expensive. All of these things are expensive. And Elon Musk has a Hyperloop proposal as well, and his is underground. So and I'm not quite sure how that works. So I haven't looked into that one yet. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's sometimes these things are more of a make work project than actually solving a real problem. There may not be a real problem that needs to be solved. And nobody's really complaining about, to use the Edmonton-Calgary situation, nobody's really complaining very loudly about driving 2.5 hours in your car. You can make phone calls. You can, it's not unbearable. And then you got your car at the other end.
Yeah, and basically it's a straight line. You just do a loop around the city of Red Deer. So you could tie the steering wheel down, put a brick on, if you didn't have cruise control, a brick on the accelerator, have an alarm clock wake you up in half an hour so you can turn around Red Deer or an hour and a half and then make the turn and then continue straight on to Calgary. Get another 25-minute nap.
My Tesla that has Autopilot, which probably shouldn't be called Autopilot, but they call it Autopilot, will make the whole trip. It's called Navigate on Autopilot. If you put a destination in Calgary into the computer, it'll make the whole trip pretty much for you. There's a couple of spots where it kicks out, but basically almost from the center of Edmonton to the center of Calgary. The driver is still supposed to be in control at all times, but it basically guides you the whole way. It'll even change lanes. If the right lane is slow and the left lane is clear, it'll pull over into the left lane, past the slow traffic, and then get back in the right lane. It's quite enjoyable. So, once that comes in, really people, that'll in 5 or 10 years, or maybe even 3 years, so it'll be quite widespread and available. And people would rather have that, I think. They can eventually have a little snooze while the car's moving into Calgary.
We'll have more with Hilliard MacBeth right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Value from success, growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Hilliard MacBeth. Hilliard, the chartered banks of Canada are into their second quarter of earnings, I believe. What kind of a picture is being painted?
So the the quarter that was ended, I guess it's the July 31st quarter, so that includes a lot of the COVID-related activity. Two banks have reported so far, Bank of Nova Scotia, Bank of Montreal, and of course they're very different. Bank of Nova Scotia is very international. Bank of Montreal has a big U.S. operation, but it's more Canadian. And both of them, in their Canadian division, though, had about a 50% drop in profits. And now, it's quite interesting because, as you and I have discussed before on the show, there's this thing called the mortgage deferral cliff looming at the end of September. So everybody was allowed to defer their mortgage and their auto loans and their credit cards for up to 6 months. And when the lockdown started in March, 6 months comes up around the end of September. So we don't know what's going to happen, but there's 776,000 mortgages in deferral plus a whole bunch of other loans. So the banks are allowed to pretend, and this pretend is the word, I think, that these loans are all in good standing, and they don't have to take a loss just because these people are on deferral. But the banks are also required to estimate the future losses as a percentage of all the loans outstanding, including the ones that are on deferral. So the reason I'm oversimplifying here, but the biggest reason for the drop of 50% in profits in Canada appears to be that the banks started to realize that some of these people that are on deferral are just not going to be able to pay up at the end of September when their deferral ends. And even if the deferral is extended, which, it looks like it's not going to be, because they probably would have announced it by now. But even if it's extended, it still doesn't solve the problem, because you don't know how many of those people, when they have to start paying again, how many of them are going to default and how many of them will go back to. Hey, I remember getting into an argument on Twitter with some people because they were saying, they were just taking the deferral because they want to just be cautious and they don't really need the money. And kind of like, are you kidding me? If you look at the household debt levels in Canada and you tell people they have to stay home and they're not going to get paid for even a month, they've got a big problem. Or if one of them loses their job, or if in September, if one of the parents can't go back to work because the kids can't go to school. I mean, any number of things. So it appears that the banks are starting to build in an estimate of the percentage of those loans that are on deferral, and other loans, of course, that are not on deferral but are defaulting. They have to build that into their earnings, and of course, it's a deduction. So now they're still making money, but only half the rate that they were, which is a pretty big drop. The Canadian banks have been, up until now, extremely solid in terms of the billions of dollars every quarter that they make, and so a 50% drop is sizable. Although people didn't seem to be too surprised by it because the stock prices did not go down. Of course, they didn't announce a reduction in their dividends. That's the big item that may be coming down the road. But as long as they keep paying their dividends and making some money, maybe the Canadians are happy to own their bank shares.
We'll have more with Hilliard MacBeth right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HighStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HighStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HighStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Hilliard MacBeth. Hilliard, you pointed out there's major organizations or real estate holdings and commercial ventures in Canada that have virtually no revenue right now and have a huge mass of debt, and yet they're super important to the country. What are they?
Well, the airport authority. So the way that works in Canada is the airports, the land is owned by the federal government, and the government years ago decided that they would be set up as non-profit agencies that would run the airports. And of course, billions of dollars were spent to expand the Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver airports in Vancouver alone, I don't know how many billions of dollars were spent to get ready for the International Olympics. At any rate, the total debt of all of the airports is now $15.2 billion, and they don't have hardly any revenue at all. There are a few flights in the air, but very few. One of the biggest, actually interviewed one of the former head of the Edmonton International Airport and asked him what's the revenue for the airport. He says it's parking. Parking is the biggest single item. So obviously there's not hardly any cars parked at the airport because there's hardly any flights. And of course, another big revenue item is landing fees. So every plane pays a landing fee when they land, depending on how many passengers they have or how much the plane weighs or how much cargo they've got. And that's gone down a lot too as well. So there's a looming issue. $15.2 billion doesn't seem like much compared to, hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent on wage subsidies and income support. But it is a big item. And of course, the other thing in Canada that is looming right now is the almost shutdown of the downtown office buildings and shopping centers. So in Edmonton and Calgary, it's pretty much a ghost town downtown. And a lot of those office buildings are owned by pension plans who are very long time point of view. But still, they got to be worried that the value of those buildings are dropping, and they have to report that to their future pension receivers, and it won't be a pretty picture if they have to write down the value of those buildings. One a Toronto property owner, one of the big pensions in Ontario, owns several office towers and shopping centers in Toronto, has doubled the commission for real estate brokers if they can find a tenant to fill the office building. But they're going to pay only half of the commission in cash. The other half is going to be in gift cards that they have to spend at one of the malls, the retail malls that the pension owns. So it's getting to be a wild and crazy place out there.
Hilliard, a lot of people were calling for Finance Minister Bill Morneau's head over the WE scandal and his alleged family involvement in that. Then he was replaced with Chrystia Freeland, and now people are upset about that, perhaps even the same people. If you want to get rid of somebody and then he goes, why are they upset?
Well, I think the rift in the cabinet is, I'm not close to it myself, but my understanding is that Morneau was much closer to the business community, and the business community felt, probably with some justification, but I don't think it's as bad as they were portraying it, that all of these income support measures that the Trudeau government had done, is still doing, were causing people to stay home rather than go to work. The claim is some of them were making more money staying home than they would if they went to work. And the other side of the cabinet wanted to give more income support to people and help them to get through this emergency crisis that we're in with additional income support. And Chrystia Freeland was on one side and Bill Morneau was on the other side, and it's pretty obvious who won that battle. So now Chrystia Freeland is in, and they immediately announced an expansion of the CERB, CERB, is going to be merged into the employment assistance. I know it used to be called the employment insurance scheme, and it's going to be expanded. And one of the things, I didn't do a full review of it, but one of the things I noticed was you only have to earn $5,000 in the previous 12 months to qualify for the employment insurance payments, and the payments are pretty generous. So that's going to get that right-wing business lobby group even more upset, I'm sure. So they want the employees to be hungry for jobs, not complacent and sitting at home waiting for a higher wage to be offered. So it's a battle. It looks like you call it the left wing of the party won over the right wing. And then, of course, the Conservatives had a leadership race, and Aaron O'Toole won, and they picked, I guess, somebody from the right wing side of the party over Peter MacKay, who's viewed as more of a centrist. So the battle lines are being drawn, right wing versus left wing, and I don't know when the election will be. It could be 3 or 4 years away, or it could be in October after the speech from the throne and the budget is brought down.
Well, the Tories do have a war chest that's stuffed with cash. I don't know if the other parties could even afford to hold another election campaign.
Yeah, well, I think the likelihood is, being a minority government, if the opposition parties could agree, they could actually force an election tomorrow, right? Well, I guess not now because Parliament has been prorogued, so they can't force an election. But as soon as the Parliament comes back and there's a speech from the throne and then a budget usually is presented, they could do a no confidence motion, and if it passes, and they have the votes, if they all vote collectively together, to put the government out, and then there would have to be an election. But I don't know if they want. I mean, we're still in the recession. I know there's a lot of talk about the recovery, but there's still a very serious economic downturn, whatever you call it. And why not let the government cope with that? And wait till it's more or less over, and then force the election. That would be a better strategy, I think, for the opposition. And plus, the other part of that probably reason it won't happen is because it requires that the opposition parties, the NDP and the Greens and the Conservatives, cooperate with each other, and that's very unlikely as well. So I don't think the election will be held anytime soon, and we'll just see how it all unfolds over a period of a year or two.
Hilliard, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Nice to be with you again, Jim.
My guest has been Hilliard MacBeth, author of the second edition of the book When the Bubble Burst, Surviving the Canadian Real Estate Crash. His website, macbethmcleodgroup.com. If you have any questions for Hilliard or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.